What are some of the key milestones, or can you identify any sort of turning points that we had as an organization during your time with us?
There are a few that kind of stand out, although, as we've said, there have been lots of special things in the evolution and far too many to mention today. But a few things that I would pick out are the turn of the tide, which was the ABO's National Education Project in 1992. So
Mm,
at that point, it was still very early on in the days of orchestras having kind of learning and participation programs. And some of the major orchestras were still only kind of appointing their first education managers at that time. So the National Education Project was an attempt to kind of try and raise the profile of the importance of that kind of work and to encourage professional orchestras to really take it seriously and get involved. And I think 16 professional orchestras were involved in a kind of shared project using the same kind of themes to work with young children in schools or different kind of community groups to encourage them to get into it, to get their first taste of it, to get the musicians kind of trying things out for the first time. And our role in that was to collaborate with the BBC Philharmonic on a residency in Cambridgeshire, which was the first big project I think that orchestra had ever done. And there was some kind of trepidation amongst the players about, stepping out of their comfort zone from away from the concert platform and kind of, working in community settings and things. Um, but it did kind of accelerate the whole movement of orchestral L&P work and begin to kind of change slowly but surely kind of change the ethos within a lot of
mm,
professional orchestras about their role and what they should be doing and on and as and off the kind of concert platform. So that was a big moment I felt. And then moving on, we'd had some composers in association in quite kind of traditional sorts of ways. But in 1998, we appointed Tunde Jegede as our innovations composer, which was a bit like the National Education Project, an attempt to try and redefine what a composer's role could be. Um,
yeah.
and the whole idea of co-creation was beginning to get a lot of traction at that point. That you didn't just commission a composer to write a piece for an orchestra to play necessarily, but actually music could be made in different kinds of ways, collaboratively between artists, but also collaboratively between people in the community. And so with Tunde, we were lucky enough to produce quite a range of different projects with different orchestras in different parts of our area of operation. And some of those, because Tunde was not only a classically trained cellist and an amazing kora player, but actually he was closely involved in the club scene, the club music scene in London. And into some
Mm,
of the projects he brought, Cleveland Watkiss and some amazing, kind of drum and bass artists and things.
wow.
And it really kind of um, showed the kind of potential for kind of mixing genres and mixing artists and, again, pushing the kind of boundaries about what orchestral music could be. And we had a lot of fun, developing projects, different kinds of projects with different orchestras in different places at that time. And I'll always cherish that time as an especially vibrant kind of artistic few
Mm,
years within the organization, certainly from my perspective. So that was really special. Then in 2020, obviously in the pandemic,
mm,
we had to think hard, as everyone did, about how we can still keep things happening.
yeah.
And we did the big project Share Sound, which was an online project with six music hubs and different orchestras, different music leaders, diverse artists, and found a way to keep people engaged, to co-create
Mm,
music in new kinds of ways online, which was quite challenging, obviously, and still make an amazing kind of big creative project out of that. And I think that illustrated, as well as a kind of means to an end, a very difficult time for the country in finding a way of
Yeah.
music being shared and made online. It also kind of illustrated the way in which digital ways of working could be a legitimate and useful part of our world.
Mm,
And so, suddenly kind of online and hybrid online live activity was possible because everybody became geared up quickly to do that. And that's still, a digital dimension is still an important part of our program going forwards. Um, so I think, Orchestras Live has become an increasingly ambitious artistic organization, and artistically kind of
definitely.
driven, as well as a kind of producer and a facilitator and a supporter and all the other kind of things that we do. And those kind of milestones, I think, are the things that have particularly kind of remained with me over those years.
Mm. And it's interesting for me to hear about um how these things came to be. So, for example, with the education, with working more digitally, it's interesting to see that, to hear of you saying how this happened in the 90s, such a long time ago, but then I still see it today, and I see, I guess, the bigger and the more developed side of it. So it's nice to hear the beginnings from where these strands, these projects, these ideas, these initiatives that we've done, where it's come from.